Welcome back to Small Caps. My name is Kerry Stevenson. Today I am bringing you Golden Deeps. AXX code is GED. And now, for those of you that don't know, Jon Dugdale is the brand new, and I mean brand new, CEO for Golden Deeps, and they have got big projects in Namibia. Jon, great to see you. Welcome to Small Caps.
G'day, Kerry.
Well, Jon, let's start by introducing our listeners to who are Golden Deeps, but also I'd like to know, you're the new CEO of Golden Deeps. What was it that attracted you to this company?
Well, primarily it's all about the projects, in particular the Namibian projects. They've got major tenement holdings in a world-class mining district that's produced a huge amount of copper, lead and zinc, but also vanadium, both historically and in recent times. Now, the portfolio in Golden Deeps is essentially brownfields, and that's really right in my wheelhouse. I've got a track record of discovery in these sorts of environments, where on the face of it, you've had quite a lot of mining, but modern techniques really haven't been applied to any great extent to these areas. So it's high grade copper, high grade silver, high grade vanadium, and also lead and zinc. So that's the primary interest, but also it's got a very low market cap, Golden Deeps. So there's a lot of upside, and I see a real opportunity now to really reinvigorate the program, but also the focus in this company.
You mentioned copper, silver, vanadium. Were those some of the commodities that you like, given the fact that right now we're moving into this whole sort of clean, green energy, battery metals cycle, I guess? Was the commodity itself an important part of you taking on the role?
Very much so. Copper and vanadium, they've got a ticket in both races. Copper in particular, because it's been a commodity that's been, Dr. Copper, it's been, useful for hundreds of years, but now it's a major component of electric vehicles and all of the new applications in the battery metals market. But also vanadium. Now, this area was producing vanadium from the Abinab mine, which is one of our key projects, when vanadium was not one of the flavour of the month battery metals. It was a component of steel, and because this mine had very high grades, it was able to be produced from underground, prior to the latest battery metals boom. So we've got one of the highest grade vanadium deposits, and now that vanadium, having had a bit of a rise along with cobalt and lithium when the initial excitement level was building in battery metal space, it's now steadily on the way up based on real demand, and we see an opportunity there for vanadium as well as copper and silver to start to move both the exploration forward, but also start to think about a multiple development options.
We'll get into the high grades in a moment, but let's talk about, before we do, Namibia itself as a mining jurisdiction. I mean, it's just to the north of South Africa. Just tell us a little bit, because I think that some people would say, oh, Namibia, what's it like? Are they pro-mining? Is there any sort of challenges there?
Well, it's got a couple of big advantages, and it's a common advantage to, say, Western Australia and Mongolia, that it's quite an arid country, highly prospective for minerals. It's got a very good mining history. It's a democracy, good mining law, and they depend to quite a great extent on the cash flow from mining to keep their economy bubbling along. But that sort of arid, open farmland, not very densely populated environment is ideal, just like it is in Western Australia, just like it is in a place like Mongolia, because you've got plenty of room to move and a supportive government and a supportive emphasis on mining, because they realise how important it is to their economy.
You talked about some of the areas that you're going to be mining in. Were they mined before? How did Golden Deeps come across these projects? Have you had them a little while and I know you're the new CEO, but I'm sure you've done your research. What's the history of these projects? Because as you mentioned before, you've got quite a low market cap. Do you think the market hasn't realised the sort of the high grades and where you are operating in? I'm just, from an investment point of view, I just really want to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, well, It's a very good question. And a lot of these things go in cycles and people get a bit tired of them. But the key point here is it's a world-class high-grade mining district. The Tsumeb mine produced over 30 million tonnes of 4.3% copper. It's just outside our tenements, and 10% lead and some zinc as well. And the Kusib deposit, or the Kusib mine, which we have in our tenements, and we've just done some drilling recently, was a new discovery only in the 1990s and produced about 300,000 tonnes at 10% copper and nearly 600 grams per tonne silver. That's the equivalent of over 10 grams per tonne gold and 10% copper. So that's a recent discovery, but it was essentially a blind deposit, and it's probably the first of many opportunities. It's just a matter of going that next step, putting the whole field together, which I've done before in places like in Western Victoria and in some of the old Western mining projects like at Agnew and St Ives, where you put all the information together. There's a huge amount of information in these brownfields environments, but it just needs a new focus of looking at new opportunities. So the history of it is that the company has had these projects in various forms since, it's probably about eight years plus. They've had various programs over the years, including underground sampling and development studies and some drilling, but it really hasn't been given a red hot go and an integrated approach. So that's really what excites me. I know exactly how to do this. Done it before, I'll do it again. And the key thing is high-grade ore bodies, they don't need a lot of space. They are very small, and it's amazing how small they are and where they can hide. When I was with NPI, we discovered the Silver Swan nickel deposit, highest grade nickel deposit ever found. It's only about 60 metres long and 20 metres thick. The Golden Gift underneath Stall was hiding underneath a project that had been operated for over 100 years.
Wow.
So you've just got to look at the geology, work out what's controlling the high grades, and focus in on drilling where you think the ore bodies are, not necessarily where you'd like them to be.
Jon, you said that you've done it before, which, ladies and gentlemen, I've always said this, haven't I? You can have the best asset in the world, but you've got to have the right management to try and find it. Did you look at the data for Golden Deeps before you joined and go, oh, I can see where this is going? I mean, was that part of the attraction?
I think the key part of it is that they've got continuous holdings over several corridors there, and the mines that have been developed, like Kusib Springs, which was quite a recent discovery, have really only been looked at in a relatively small area. Now, there are electromagnetic anomalies, EM anomalies, and other occurrences at surface that really haven't been drilled. So that the extent to which I looked at the data was really, okay, what's been the focus here? Historically, it's been a discovery. They've looked at drilling that out and they've mined it, but has there been a lot of testing for new blind deposits along strike? Because these things just keep going and going and going if you sustain the three-dimensional approach and the systematic approach to exploration. So it was just clear that there's plenty of space to find new ore bodies, and my recognition that these high-grade deposits, they hide. You've just got to understand how they work. It's like a detective.
I love it. We're going to call you Detective Dugdale. So, Detective Dugdale, you just said before that Kusib Springs has been mined before. Is there any activity apart from the exploration that you're doing at the moment? Are they still mining, or is that...
No. Kusib was closed a number of years ago. So when the projects were acquired, the mines have been finished. Right. The potential at depth is, to some extent, there are already intersections of depth that indicate that it will keep going. There are the recent drilling that we've done, and maybe I'll just focus back on that. Yeah. So the recent drilling that's been done has looked at some of the shallower levels of that deposit, which is really just looking at whether there's something in and around the existing mining at Kusib. But the other focus at the same time has been to drill another deposit on another trend called the Nosib deposit. Now, that had some historical development, but no mining. And that was way back in the early part of the century. Now, I'll just take you through a bit of a sequence of, events here. Mining, early in the century, last century, that is. Then a renewed focus in the 1990s, which found the Coosup Springs deposit. That was mined, 300,000 tonnes at 10% copper. The Coosup deposit really didn't make it to surface. It was pretty small in the surface area. So it only had a little bit of mining historically, so essentially a blind deposit. Nosub block, which is what we've been drilling recently, is also a relatively small footprint at surface. It's been developed on 3 levels down about 120 metres, but some of the channel sampling of those underground developments, which our company did, include 6 metres at 9.3% copper, 4.7% lead, and other channels include 6 metres at 1.5% copper, 10% lead, 1.1% vanadium. Now, those sound a little bit like the sort of tenor we're seeing at Coosup Springs.
Yep.
We've done some drilling that we talked about in our last release that's tested the vicinity of those development areas, and we've intersected up to 30 metres of copper mineralisation in some of those RC holes, including up to 5 metres of massive sulphides in and around those areas. Now, we haven't got the results yet, but the good thing about copper is you can see it. So we know that we've hit something pretty interesting, but we've only really tested the vicinity of the previous development. Now these
Jon,
are completely open at depth and along strike, so this could be the next Coosup Springs.
That's a big call. You said you've got some results. My little ears are flapping. When do you think those results might be coming out? Because you seem pretty excited at the moment.
Yeah, so the announcement we put out last week was a pretty good guide, because we've highlighted that we've got visible intersections of copper mineralisation, malachite and azurite, but also some sulphides in these shallow level intersections, some massive sulphides over 5 metres in hole 10. All of the samples are in the lab. They get sample prepped in Namibia by Intertek, and then we send them to the Intertek laboratory in Perth. So all of the samples are now in the lab. The majority of those samples are being processed at the moment, so it'll be within weeks. And by mid to late June, we should have all of those results through. We will give them a bit of a zap with the XRF at the lab as well, just to get some indications. So that'll help guide us to what sort of intersection we're expecting. But we've only really just tickled the surface. We've only done 15 holes at Nosub and 10 holes at Coosup, but it's only within that top 100 metres. But it's a matter of saying, okay, we're onto something here. Now let's grow it, because the mineralisation is open along strike and at depth, particularly at Nosub.
So just give us an idea, as investors, what are the next steps? How are you going to deliver shareholder value going forward? Because I mentioned it before, I think you've been flying a little bit under the radar. You just joined as the new CEO. How do you see this growing, developing, and what are the next steps for Golden Deeps?
So I mentioned Nosub and Coosup, the drilling that we've just done. So obviously if we get results that back up what we're seeing in the percussion chips, then that'll lead us to a follow-up drilling program and really start to step out, change the scale of what we're looking at to start to see what these things could grow into. There are also targets at depth at Coosup Springs where there's previous intersections. Don't ask me to quote them at the moment, but they're below the previous development and the previous mining. The previous mining only went down to about 300 metres, which is not very deep when you're talking about high grade. So plenty of potential to expand down plunge. I'll also be looking at other targets along strike from both Coosup and Nosub, where there's previous EM anomalies and previous shallow workings, which might lead to anything. So that'll be about compiling, drawing up sections, putting together longitudinal projections, modelling things in 3D. The same approach that led to discoveries in the Agnew belt that I was associated with, the same approach that led to discoveries plus million ounces in the Stall Belt, where it took the same approach. It works. The other string, though, we have to our bow is the Abernab high-grade vanadium project, which is on the same trend as the Nosib copper deposit. These deposits are all sort of variations on a bit of a theme. Some of them are high copper-silver, some of them are high lead-zinc, some of them are high vanadium with lead and zinc. So they're all different combinations of metals, but the common denominator seems to be high grade. The Abernab mine was a vanadium producer up until, or pretty well from the 50s up until quite recently. It was producing vanadium when vanadium wasn't flavour of the month, as I said. Previous drilling by other companies has identified high-grade extensions of that vanadium deposit, and we have a resource of about 860,000 tonnes at 1.6% vanadium pentoxide, which is relatively high grade. Now, it's previously been mined from underground, previously made quite a bit of money when the vanadium price was, pretty ordinary. We're doing a mining and processing study currently that is reaching fruition, which will just look at that resource that we have established, and it's looking like we've probably got a project, a base case project, which works because the high grade and the quality of the concentrate is very good. It's produced vanadium for the world market before, but we'll develop that further. It's only a sort of conceptual study. But the idea behind that is to establish whether we've got something that works as a base case and then look to expand on that with further exploration. Now, once we do that, you can start to think about a regional play. Okay, we've got high-grade copper and silver at Coosa Springs. We already have extensions. We've got high-grade copper with silver, lead, zinc and vanadium at Nosib. We've got high-grade vanadium with lead and zinc at Abernab. They're all within about 20 kilometres of each other. Can we look at a regional high-grade production, multi-commodity play feeding into the battery metals market with fantastic exploration upside going along at the same time? I think we can.
Wow. Okay, so I had so many questions, and you just got me overexcited about having a look at that. One of the questions was, these have been previous mines. Is there much infrastructure that's been left behind? And what are there roads? Is there infrastructure? What's there at the moment?
Yeah, so the shaft at Abernab, for instance, the high-grade vanadium is okay. That can be refurbished. The access to Coosa Springs that's only recently closed. So that the last 10 years, that is. That has an existing access. Nosib, we've been down and done the underground sampling, so the development is still open there. So the underground access looks to be quite good, so that could be potentially utilised or combined with decline development to provide two access ways and ventilation. Roads, previous footprints. There's no existing processing facilities there, but the previous footprint is there. In fact, there's the laboratory is at one of the old mine sites, can't remember the name. So those mine sites, even though the processing plants aren't active, are still, power's still connected and so forth. So the ability to move back into a mining district that still has, a footprint. It's not like walking into somewhere like Bendigo where the mine's closed, 100 years ago and everyone's forgotten about it. It's only had mining in people's memory.
Okay, so we're running out of time. I just want to ask you this, Jon. You're based in Perth. The project's in Namibia. What's the team like? How's the communication? Are there any issues with this darn COVID?
We've got a very good team in Namibia. I've been on 2 Zoom calls with them. They're talking to landholders, setting up for continuing programs and so forth. So they're up and running and very well established and very good relationships with both government and local landholders. So that's no problem at all. I'll just quickly mention we do also have our high-grade gold projects in New South Wales, and we've got a team looking at those as well. So that's obviously not the primary focus, but it still follows the theme, high grade, and in that case, the focus is on gold. So, and that's right in my wheelhouse, being in the Lock and Fold Belt.
And you know it's in my wheelhouse because I'm known as the gold nerd, so I love gold. So it's not a focus at the moment, though. Your focus is Namibia. Is that correct?
Well, we certainly it is a focus alongside the Namibian projects because we are planning to do drilling as soon as we have approval in terms of land access and some of it's on government-controlled land. So we are looking to advance the New South Wales projects, and I see it also as an area where we can start to build a bit more of a presence, given that I've got a background in the area and we can start to look at other opportunities. So certainly it's not on the back burner. It's something we're looking to drill as well. But yeah, the primary focus right at the moment is to really get the Namibian projects humming with new results coming through.
All right, we started this off by me saying that you had a low market cap and you might have been flying under the radar. Jon, finish it up and tell all of us investors out here why you think right now people should sit up and take note of Golden Deeps.
High-grade copper, high-grade vanadium, silver, lead and zinc in Namibia, brownfields environment, previous mines that have only recently been closed. We can reinvigorate that whole field with exploration and also development focus on mining and processing in that well-established mining camp. That's immediate. We've got results coming through in the next few weeks. We also have exposure to high-grade gold in Lock and Fold Belt as well, and that'll be a focus of drilling in the near future at the same time. So plenty of news flow to come, but a real starting point to potentially build a very exciting exploration program and potential development in the not-too-distant future.
Very safe pair of hands with Jon Dugdale at the helm, ladies and gentlemen. As I said before, Golden Deeps, ASX code is GED. Plenty of news flow to come. Jon, I wish you all the best. It'll be a very exciting year for Golden Deeps. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kerry.